Hello guys, once again welcome back to the chairmanship presentation. I don't want to waste a lot of time today in this video. I want to quickly go into the lesson uh, and see what we can do. I want to give you or let you know that in today's lesson I'm going to do part 1 and part 2. Now I'm going to be using PowerPoint and I'm going to shift very soon to a small screen and enlarge the point screen. This in itself should be able to help you see what we'll be doing or what we'll be discussing. Why two parts in one video? Because all of them are designed to be very short, but then I thought if we combine them and did one video, it will help us move very fast to other lessons that I have put across. Remember, I promised that after chairmanship I'm going to do note tying. So quickly, let us go and look at part 1 of chairmanship. Let's quickly go and look at part 1 of chairmanship. Okay, what is it that we're going to look at in part 1 of chairmanship? We're going to look at the following. We are going to look at the following: principles of a meeting, meeting notices, preparation. Okay, so those are the three things that I want to look at in part 1. Okay, what is chairmanship? Chairmanship, the simplest definition you are ever going to get is this one: the position or office of presiding over a meeting. Now, there are two things. It's either the position or you are holding office so that you can preside over a meeting. Okay, the things that you need to uphold as a chairperson, cardinal things as a Christian chairperson. Number one, rules of order. Rules of orders are just customs and rules of parliamentary order. Okay, number two, Proverbs chapter 8 verse 20. Lead in the ways of righteousness in the midst of the path of judgment. Those two things Christian chairman should always uphold, and I want to emphasize always uphold. Once you do that, you have a smooth flow of your meeting. Okay, you will have a smooth flow of your meeting. Okay, presiding officer. Who is a presiding officer? It is anyone who is presiding over a meeting, and the presiding officer is called the chairman or a chairperson. Now, the term chairperson is usually used in a generic sense. Generic simply means either male or female. So it is possible to call a female chairman, but then you should be also cautious, because in some societies, in some cultures, it is very offensive to call a woman chairman, and hence a lot of people would rather use the word chairperson. And in my presentation, unless otherwise, I'll refer to the term chairperson. Now, in a meeting, there are adopted terms that can be used to address the one who presides over a meeting. Example, Madam President. Now, Madam President is the office. Are you seeing this? So, for example, if the one who should chair a particular meeting, say an executive meeting, is supposed to be the president of that organization, if so, when addressing him in the meeting, you will say Mr. President or Madam President. What happens if the one who's supposed to preside is unable and someone else is presiding over that meeting? Other terms can be used. The term Mr. President is a term used as in office and not as the position. So if now someone is in the position, can be addressed as chair, moderator, facilitator, depending on whatever word is suitable for you. So you can use any of those. Principles of a meeting. Let's quickly go to principles of a meeting. Now, these things I'm listing here must be visible, must be seen in a chair. A chair should show justice and courtesy to all who are in the meeting. Everyone in the meeting should see that the chair is just and the chair is is one who acknowledges everyone. The chair shows courtesy to all. Okay, that is number one. Number two, the majority rules. Whatever decision the majority makes through voting in a meeting, that binds the whole group in a meeting. Okay. Having had said that, the other side of that is that the minority have the right to be heard. It doesn't mean that if the general membership of the meeting are agreeing to one specific motion in the meeting, then those who do not agree should not be heard. No, they must be heard. So majority rules, the minority have the right to be heard, and then the right of free and fair debate. The same time that is allocated to one member who is for a motion is the same time should be allocated to a member who is against a motion that is under debate. Okay. There should be positive leadership. There should be positive leadership in a meeting. Okay. Other things, the votes of all voting members counted equally. Okay. So for example, if you are voting for something and you are 10 in a meeting, and by virtue of the hands raised, you know that three quarters, but you should count all of them. You should know how many. If it is seven, seven are for the motion. If it is three, three are against the motion. Okay, all right. Do only one item of business at a time. This in itself shows a high level of organization. You cannot discuss so many businesses at a go. Because why? Because you end up confusing the procedure of the meeting. Okay, use rules of meeting procedures. Okay, so that is what I was talking about, what the chairman should uphold. Okay, meeting begins and ends on time. This is very important. If you set up a meeting to say it will start at 11 and it will end at 12, the 1 hour allocated for the meeting should be enough, because the items that you are going to discuss you should have already planned that for us to discuss these items, they will fit in the 1 hour window. Okay, so the time is very important because everyone is busy, and as such, people should come to meetings on time. And when people attend the meetings on time, meetings should also end on time. This is very important. This is very important. Let's go to the second thing, meeting notices. Okay. Some of the major components of meeting notices are notice of the meeting. What is a notice of the meeting? This is a memo or a letter. Let's stick with the word memo. This is a memo that invites members of that particular sitting to a meeting. So for example, you send up a memo and say on such a date, say for example on 11th of August 2020, there will be a meeting at Livingston Central SDHH. This is what a notice of meeting. Now, you must send the agenda of the meeting in advance. Okay, why are you sending the agenda of the meeting in advance? You are sending it so that should other members feel there's an item that should be included on the agenda, they should also write to you so that you can include it on the agenda. This in itself saves time for the meeting to not to go and deal with any other businesses after the main business of the meeting has been discussed. Okay, minutes of the meeting should be sent so that those who can make it's easy for people to read through, so that when the meeting starts, people will only come and say, yeah, this, you make corrections and everything. It saves time to send minutes before the meeting. Okay, equally the reports. So these notices should be included when you are sending an invitation for a particular meeting. I would encourage secretaries to include all of these things in the meeting notices. Okay, I'm going to look at this in the later stage, how to write all of these four things that are listed on here in the meeting notices. Okay, preparation of meeting. Now, I want to take a bit of time here and explain exactly what we need to go. Let's go quickly and see what we are talking about. Number one, venue. When you are preparing for a meeting, you are preparing a meeting to take place at a particular venue. So, what do you need to know? Number one, the venue must be organized and clean. You cannot call people to a meeting in a meeting room that is very dirty and not organized. Things just seem to lay around and you say we'll have a meeting. Okay, no, the meeting place has to be organized, the meeting place has to be cleaned. Okay, number two, a place that is easily accessed by everyone attending the meeting. Okay, a well-known place. You cannot take a meeting to a place where it is even hard to access. In fact, it is important for you, the chairperson and the secretary, to choose a place that is common or a place that you usually hold your meetings. Okay, so the place should also be centrally located, okay, or a usual place. If it is an organization, take for instance, if Livingston Central Church, it is important for you to hold your meetings at Livingston Central SDA Church. Why? Because that's where all the members come to meet. This does not mean that you cannot take the meeting away from Livingston Central SDA Church. You can. You can actually take your meeting away from Livingston SDA Church and take it to Capitol Theatre, a central place in Livingston City, where everyone, and it is easy to access. You don't need to give a list or a paragraph writing to describe where the place is. It is easily located. The main point is it is supposed to be a known place and it should be easy to access. Okay. And number three, the venue of the meeting must have facilities that will provide comfort for the members that are sitting in that meeting. Facilities like restrooms, okay, meeting stationaries. You provide pens, notepads. You provide anything that people will need in that meeting. Okay, water. Now, there's a research that was done about water, that people who take water in a meeting as compared to people who take soft drinks or any other drink in a meeting, when you compare the two, the people who take water in a meeting have a long concentration period. They pay attention in a meeting for a longer period compared to one who would drink soft drinks. I don't want to mention names of drinks, but water is very, very, very important in a meeting. So when you are organizing these things, all of the things that I've listed here, clean, organized, easily accessed. They should have restrooms. You should have water at a meeting place. This makes the meeting place to be a very conducive environment. Okay, reports. I had spoken about reports. Okay. What about reports? This is in the organization stage, okay? Distribute the reports before the day of the meeting, okay? You should be able to distribute the reports before the day of the meeting so that the members of the meetings can study, so that when you come in the meeting, it's just an issue of a simple presentation and ask for questions and discuss on the reports. It saves a lot of time. Okay, this saves a lot of time because members, okay, we just, they will study them, and you will have saved a lot of time instead of presenting the documents at the very day of the meetings. Okay, so all reports supposed to be factual and show the true representation. Okay, all reports. The secretary's report must be factual and show the true representation. The financial report, the committee reports, all of them, they should be factual. Why? Because the decision that the organization or that the society is going to make will be based on these facts that are presented in these reports. Okay, committee reports such are supposed to be treated as per constitution. Okay, for example, some constitutions will say committees should report to the executive committee, and the executive committee will report to the general council. Other constitutions will say committees will report directly to the general council. So these reports should be treated as per constitution. Okay, let's move on. Setup. Setup simply means how you are going to arrange the room. How are the people going to sit in the room? So depending on the type of the meeting, the secretary and the chair can decide on the setup style. Okay, there are various styles that can be used, and I'm only going to mention just a few for the purpose of this. Meaning, you can go and look at setup styles that will well fit your meeting, and those styles in themselves should be able to facilitate a proper flow of the meeting. So it's not just picking this style, or today we are going to pick this style and use this style, tomorrow we'll use this style, the other day no. It is to facilitate the proper flow of the meeting. So let's quickly look at the styles. Okay, the auditorium or theater style. Okay, this style in itself is an imaginary class meeting. It's more like students are sitting and the teacher is in front, but the people who sit in front here in the green bar, as you can see, are the ones that are facilitating, are the ones that are presenting. And this style is usually for large groups. For example, the South Zambia Conference General Council would sit in this because there are a lot of people coming in for the meeting. Okay, and as you can see, it is really for it's more of a passive kind of learning situation where people do not have where to put their writing pads to write and everything like that. So the good thing to carry out of this is that the auditorium or theater style is highly suited for large groups. For example, you can have a general council and use this style as a style for a meeting setup. Okay, let's go to the next one. Classroom setup. This one, same, almost similar with theater style. The only difference is the people attending this meeting have a table in front of them where they'll put their notepad and take notes. Okay, so in this type, it is active learning. Okay, people write down notes. There is a table in front of you. You are engaged in the meeting. This is the type. Also, this type is not usually meant for very large groups, but medium-sized groups. So you can use this style in that nature. Okay, let's go to the next one. Boardroom style. Boardroom style is, this is just a classic style of meetings. It works for executive councils, for executive meeting. Okay, people are gathered around the table. So sometimes it may be a round table. People are sitting around the table and the chair is chairing. Sometimes it is just tables, square tables or rectangle tables are put together and people are sitting just round, like in the picture here. It's a boardroom. Okay, so usually it's for small groups like the executive council. They'll sit in this style to discuss in a meeting. So this is highly suited for an executive council. Okay, so the hollow square style is also similar to the boardroom. Small groups. Okay, facilitate interactive communication between members. Okay, so the difference between the boardroom and the hollow is why it's called the hollow, because in the middle of the table here there is space. So if someone wants to present, they are free to stand in the center and make their presentation. But at large, it facilitates interactive communication. You are able to talk to someone because in itself it is good for small groups. Okay, the executive, the board meeting style is good for a board, but sometimes boards are very big. But for the hollow square, small groups is a nice format uh, to go with. So this the form. This is these are the styles, and this is where I end my presentation on. This is where I end my first presentation part one. I'll quickly switch now and go to part two. I'll switch and go to part two. Okay, let's look at part two of chairmanship today. Part two of chairmanship today. All right. Part two. What are we talking about in part two? What are we talking about in part two? Okay. Let's quickly look at part two. The things that we are going to look at is opening. In part two, opening the meeting, introduction of business, privilege of speaking. Now, what I'll be looking at in here is a proper procedure. These are the proper procedures that you do in a meeting setup. Okay, so I'm quick. The reason why I'm quick is because I want to do these videos in the shortest possible time. Okay, so opening the meeting, introduction of business, privilege of speaking. Let's go to opening a meeting. Okay, calling the meeting to order. Calling the meeting to order is simply calling the attention of the members. So the presiding officer may say, for example, in the first one, you can see here the presiding officer will say, the meeting will please come to order. He's calling the attention of the people who are waiting for the meeting to start, okay? Or he can say, the time has come for a meeting to begin. At this point, the chair introduces the first item on the agenda, okay? The chair introduces the first item on the agenda. Now, I want you to notice that I've written devotion. So this is in a case of a religious meeting. So the first thing will be the song, the prayer, and the Bible reading. Okay, so those are the three things that usually are involved in a devotion. So number one, let's deal with these things. Number one, the song. The chair will say, let us open our meeting by singing hymn number two. Maybe it's in the Seventh day Adventist hymns, or it is in the Christ in Songs local hymns. Or the chair may even say, in case of the youth meeting, say, we will begin our meeting by singing the Master Guide anthem, the Master Guide song. Okay, so it depends on what the chair wants. Okay, so after that is sung, the second thing is prayer. So the chair will address the people and say, Sister Lucio Momusowe will now offer a prayer. Or he will say, we will all join in the prayer with Brother Moses Mundia. Okay. The other thing the chair would say, we will have a season of prayers. Let Sister Lushomo, Brother Mwinde, and Brother James lead. After which, let us join. Okay, let us join. So after the prayers have been offered, we are going to the Bible reading. Now I want you to follow me clearly and not misquote me. Number one, the chairperson shall read from the Bible unless another person is appointed to do so. Now, what do I mean unless another person is appointed to do so? There are constitutions that say the pastor or the one in charge of devotions, depending on whom you call him in your executive, the spiritual leader will always do that, or your what do you call him, your chaplain. Yeah, the chaplain will be doing the Bible unless it is stated so. Otherwise, point number two, make it a habit as a chairperson to lead devotions in every meeting. Lead devotions, pray. You should be the one to read the Bible. You should be the one to encourage people after reading the Bible unless it is stated. Okay, now the announcements, if you've seen, I was giving you examples of how to say it. Now the announcements of occasions may vary depending on the meeting. So there's no one specific way of saying, of calling a meeting to order. For example, there's no one specific way of calling for prayers or for calling for a devotion or calling for an opening. So there is no, it may vary from occasion to occasion. Okay. Now, depending on the group, when the group is big, the chair should be very formal. The smaller the group, the less formal you can become. You may even be calling each other by names because the group is very small, and rather than calling each other by titles. So that's one thing you should also depend. So next thing in opening the meeting is we are going to roll call. Okay. After the devotion, we are going to roll call. The chairperson asks for the roll call by saying the secretary will now call the roll. Whereupon the secretary will read from the quarterly record sheet or members register. Okay. So she will open the book and read name by name and marks the record as members answer or fail to answer present. So, for example, Brother Watson Mukwapa present. Brother Mwinde silent, it means Brother Mwinde is absent. So, in the fail to answer, you write absent. You mark them absent or you mark them present, depending on what your quarterly record or your members register indicate. Okay, so approval of meetings is the next thing. So after the roll call, the secretary will the secretary will now present minutes from the last meeting. Okay, the secretary will now present minutes from the last meeting. Okay, so this is after the roll call. Now the minutes will be presented by the secretary, and after the minutes have been presented by the secretary, the chair will ask, are there any correction to these minutes? Okay, now you remember I said if you had presented these minutes earlier before the meetings, the members will be able to quickly point out corrections. Okay, so there will be corrections that will be made. Now, if there are none, there will be no correction made. Now, if there are corrections that are to be made to the minutes, okay, now notice, it is only the people who were present in the previous meeting that are to make these corrections. Okay, and the majority who were present, the majority who were in the previous meeting, are the ones who are supposed to make corrections, because it doesn't make sense to come and make corrections to minutes of a meeting you were absent. Okay, we're still on approval of meetings. So if there are corrections that are to be made, they will be made, and the conclusions are to be made. So after everything is made, the chair says there are okay, let's say there were changes, there were corrections, or there were no corrections. The chair will now say the minutes will stand as read. In some places, a motion is called, and I like to move to with a motion. A motion will be called to approve. Now it will mean you need to vote that the minutes are okay or the minutes are not. Once this is done, it tells the members of a meeting to move to the next item on the agenda. Okay, so after all of this is done, we are going to the introduction of business. What am I talking about? Introduction of business. This is the reason why this meeting has been called. At this point, this is when you begin to tackle things that are supposed to be tackled in the meeting that has been called for that particular day. Okay, so before you even do the business, there is what we call unfinished business or matters arising. Okay, there are matters arising. So the business comes next. The chair introduces this section by saying we shall now take up the business of the meeting. Then he asks, is there any unfinished business to come before us? Unfinished business for what? For the previous meeting. Okay, so whoever is in charge of that unfinished business, for example, if it is Sister Malimbu, will say, we have this and this, the report for camp meeting, blah blah blah. All of that thing will be tackled in the introduction of business. Okay, so once all of that is finished, the secretary now would distribute the agenda. Now the question is, why is he distributing or he distributing the agenda again? Because there's a possibility that there were items that were added to the agenda and it would be different to the one that was sent in the meeting notices. Okay, so it was distributed. Okay, and it is going to be discussed upon as it is. Now let me look at committee reports. Okay, committee reports. Okay, if committees are active and have been instructed to report to the executive committee, the chair calls for those reports saying, are there any committee reports? Or the camp meeting committee will now present the report. At this point, the committee's chairperson or the committee's secretary introduces its report. Okay, once it is discussed and it is voted, it is the duty of the presiding officer to call for the vote of the committee and not the committee's chairperson. But this can also vary depending on what your constitution says. Okay, what the constitution says. So, privilege of speaking. At what point do you talk, and when do you talk, and why do you talk? No, that's not what I'm going to do. The thing is, speaking in a meeting is a privilege. So how do you attain that privilege is what I'm getting into. So number one, getting the floor. So all members of the meeting, all persons in the meeting have the right to speak on items making the agenda. You don't just come in a meeting and start talking about football when the meeting is not about football. Okay, so you speak on items making the agenda. Okay, the person should address the chair and be recognized. Okay, the most accepted way is to call the chair. You address him and say, Mr. Chair, and you wait until you are recognized, or you raise up your hand and say, Mr. Chair or Brother Chair. When he has not recognized you, it means you have not been given the privilege to speak. But when he has recognized you, you will then be given the privilege to speak. So how does he recognize you? So until the chairperson calls your name, saying, for example, you say, Brother Chair or Mr. Chair, you're raising your hand, he will recognize you and say, Brother Munandalo. It means he has given you the floor. It is your time to speak. Sometimes he may not know your name because you are in a general council. He will point at you. It means he is recognizing you and giving you the floor. Okay, so the one who has been given the floor is free to speak. And when he is talking, he is not speaking looking at the people with whom he is attending the meeting, but he is looking and talking to the chair and addressing the chair. So in as much as you have been given the floor, you must be pertinent, meaning you must stick to the topic at hand. Okay, maintaining order. What happens if, for example, one person is talking, the other begins to talk? What happens? It means there is disorder in the meeting. So if any person is attempting to speak while one is holding the floor that the chairperson has given him, okay, it is the duty of the chairperson to repress the disorder by saying, for example, Miss Malimbu has the floor. Okay, in this instance, for example, maybe Brother Watson is trying to speak while Sister Malimbo is speaking, or Brother Watson does not agree with what Sister Malimbo is saying, and he begins to talk, the chair will say, Brother Watson, Miss Malimbo has the floor. If the noise persists, the chair will say, order, please. Or he will say, please come to order. Okay. Now, what happens? What happens if the chair does not come alive to the fact that there's someone disturbing you when you are having the floor? Okay, you easily address the chair and say, Mr. Chair, do I have the floor? Other people always want to say, Brother Chair, am I protected? Okay, that is acceptable. That is just to bring the chair alive to the fact that someone is disturbing the right, the privilege, not the right, the privilege that you have been given to talk or to debate on a particular issue. So that is maintaining the order. Okay, now the announcements, I want to say it again, the announcements may vary as the occasion indicates. There is no specific way of announcing procedures, but there is a parliamentary way of handling yourself in the meeting. So, for example, I want to just place an emphasis. There is no specific way of saying we will sing this hymn, of saying Brother Saul or Brother Smith to pray for us, or Brother Mnandalu to pray for us. There is no specific way. It only varies as the occasion indicates. Okay, as the occasion indicates. Allow me for now to end here with the presentation part 1 and part 2, so that we can do other things. So part 1 and part 2 ends here, and I hope that I'll do the next videos in the shortest possible time. I've taken 36 minutes, okay, to 40 minutes maybe, which is about 20 minutes as I promised for each video, but then I think we are good. We are good. So until next time we do the last two parts, or the last part in chairmanship, depending on what time I have available. God bless you. Bye bye.